Okay, fine. Separation techniques are very important analytical techniques, especially for the separation or bifurcation of the chemical components irrespective of their states. So in this module, we are going to discuss about the principle and the definition of separation and different separation techniques, what we will employ for the separation of solids, liquids, and gaseous species. And even the classification of separation techniques is very essential to understand, because the chemical components will be present in various states. Some chemical components will be present in solid states, while some will be present in liquid state and some will be present in gaseous state. So therefore it is going to be very essential to understand how to separate the solids, how to separate the liquids, how to separate the gaseous species. We have to understand in a better way. So first, you should know the definition of separation. It is very simple to define separation. Separation is a method which converts the mixture of components which may be present in a solid mixture or a liquid solution, whatever it is, into individual component. So separation is a method that converts a mixture or solution of chemical substances into two or more distinct product mixtures. Say, for example, if you have a mixture containing two chemical components or three chemical components or multiple chemical components, we will be interested to separate all those one or two or three or multiple chemical components which are present in the mixture. So we will subject the mixture for a typical separation technique, and we will bifurcate them. Each and every individual component will be separated. Whichever the separation technique we are following, our intention is to separate individual components which is present in a mixture. And the mixture may be a homogeneous mixture or a heterogeneous mixture. So in order to subject an homogeneous mixture or heterogeneous mixture, we must understand what is the separation technique we have to use in order to bifurcate each and every individual component which is present in the mixture. So the aim of using the separation technique is to convert a mixture into individual components. Those components will be present in the mixture. So we can define the separation as it is a method or it is a process of converting a complex mixture or a simple mixture into individual components which are present in a mixture. So what is the aim to perform the separation? What is the result after subjecting a mixture for separation process? So we may be interested to collect only one interested the constituent which is present in the mixture. So that is going to be the result. So we will be able to retrieve at least one of the interested constituents which is present in the mixture. Means once the separation is over, in our hand we will be having a single component. So that has been separated from other endogenous substances or other matrices or other constituents which are also present in the mixture. And even the separation will be performed in order to divide the mixture into pure constituents. If you take any mixture, that mixture is not said to be as pure mixture. Any mixture which we will be having may not be pure enough. If we are intended to purify that particular mixture, we have to procure the constituents which are present in the mixture. Therefore, in a purification process, we will employ this separation technique. And even not only the purification process, we will be intended to remove the interferences which are present in the mixture or which are present in the sample. Say, for example, if you take a blood sample and if we are interested to determine what is the amount of urea present in the blood sample, so we have to remove urea from all those endogenous substances which are also present in the blood sample. So separation of urea will be the intention, and other interferences such as plasma, serum, water, proteins, amino acids, uric acid, sugar, electrolytes, etc. All those are interferences, because if you do not remove these interferences, we cannot subject the active ingredient or active analyte which is present in any sample cannot be subjected for analysis. Therefore, the result of a separation process is to retrieve at least one of the interested component which is present in the mixture, or we have to divide the mixture into individual constituents which are present in the mixture, and we may have to purify the given sample by procuring the required analyte. by removing the interferences which are present in the mixture. Okay. Whatever the separation process you do, what is the basis for the separation of chemical components which are present in the mixture or which are present in the sample? The basis is the physical properties of the analyte. If you take a mixture, if you take any sample, that will be made by different constituents or different components, and all those different components may possess different size, shape, mass, density, or chemical affinity. So if we are aware about the different sizes of all those components which are present in the sample, and we can easily employ a suitable separation technique for the separation of all those components. That's what the basis is going to be for the separation of chemical components. So the physical properties of the analytes, mainly size, shape, mass, density, and chemical affinity. And these physical properties of the analyte will be varying from one component to another component which are present in the mixture. So if we have the better knowledge about the size of the molecule or size of the component which is present in the mixture, or what is the mass of individual component present in the mixture, or what is the chemical affinity, some components will be polar, some components will be non-polar, some components will be having larger molecular mass, and some molecules will be having smaller molecular masses. So based on this knowledge, we can use a suitable analytical technique, suitable separation technique for the separation of all those chemical compounds. So this is going to be the basis when we employ a separation technique for the separation process. Normally, separation techniques will be employed irrespective of the nature of the sample what we have. So particularly two types of samples we will be dealing during the separation process. The first kind of the sample is going to be solids are needed to be separated from the liquid mixtures. If you have a sample or if you have a specimen sample which is needed to be subjected for the separation process, and that is liquid in nature, but there are solids also present in that liquid sample. So how to separate these solids from the liquid mixture? And even in that, the mixture may be homogeneous and it may also be heterogeneous. If it is homogeneous in nature, these three are the separation techniques we will employ. They are evaporation, distillation, and centrifugation process. Evaporation process, it is very simple. What you do, you will take the sample, and you will dissolve in a suitable solvent. So if a single analyte or individual chemical species is found to dissolve in a suitable solvent, then you will remove all those undissolved components by filtration process, and the supernatant you will get it, and you will heat that. You will evaporate the solvent, and the residue obtained in the beaker, residue obtained in the evaporation vessel is the analyte. So that individual component has been separated by the evaporation process. So like this, the evaporation process is not only suitable for the separation of single chemical component, but it is also holds good for the separation of multiple chemical components. And even distillation process. So we can convert liquids into vapors by heating, and the vapors are collected in a distillation flask or a collector flask. And once we low down the temperature, the vapors of the chemical components can be converted into liquids. So this distillation process is solely dependent on the temperature or the boiling temperature or vaporization point of the chemical components which are present in the mixture. So in a homogeneous mixture, you assume there are two compounds are present, and you may also assume those two compounds are possessing different boiling points. So when you boil the homogeneous mixture to a temperature above the boiling points of first compound, then first compound will be converted into vapor, and that vapors will be arrested in a collector flask. And if you low down the temperature for that particular vapor will be converted into liquid. Now the two components have been separated by the distillation process. And other popular technique is centrifugation process. In this centrifugation process, we will be using an equipment centrifuge, and the solution will be taken, the homogeneous solution or homogeneous mixture, which may be having one or two components will be taken in the centrifuge tube, and that will be placed in a centrifugal machine. And this solution which is present in the centrifugation tube will be rotated with higher speed. So all those components which are having the affinity towards the centrifugation process, they will become undissolved and they will be settled at the bottom of the centrifugation tube. So therefore, the supernatant is made with other component, and the compounds which are settled at the bottom of the centrifugation tube, that also may be due to the precipitation process. So they are due to other components which are present in the mixture. And this is okay for homogeneous mixtures. There may be solids which are present in the liquid mixture. So if you evaporate, the solid which is present in the liquid will be separated, and even the distillation, we can increase the temperature of the compound which is solid in order to convert that into vapor, and vapor will be converted into liquid by arresting the vapor in a collector flask. And even centrifugation, while doing the centrifugation, the solid which is present in the mixture will be settled at the bottom of the centrifugation tube, and the liquid will be present in the upper layer of that solid which is present at the bottom. So this is how all these three techniques become widely popular in order to separate homogeneous mixtures. And next is heterogeneous mixtures. Heterogeneous mixtures are also possible, which are contained with solids and liquids. So more commonly, the gravitation process will be employed in order to separate the components which are present in the heterogeneous mixture, or even in sedimentation process. So gravitation process means you assume the components which are solid, which are present in liquid mixture, you keep them in a container. Because of their mass, because of the gravitational attraction of those solids, the attraction of those solids will be will be made to settle those solids at the bottom of the container. That is known as gravitation. Or even filtration. If the particle size of the solids are more, then we can use an ordinary filter paper or some special filter papers such as Whatman filter papers. Even we can use glass wool or Gooch crucibles or Gache crucibles, whatever it is. So we can filter. The aim of the filtration is to avoid the penetration of the solids through the filter, and that will allow only passage of the liquid through the filter. So over the surface of the filter, all these solid molecules will be procured, solid components will be present, and the liquid will be allowed to pass through the filter. And the magnetic separation, this magnetic separation will be done for the separation of magnetic components and from non-magnetic components. You assume solids which are present in liquid mixtures, and if these solids are magnetic in nature, you will pass this through a magnet, and all those magnetic compounds will be attracted by the magnet, and all those non-magnetic compounds will be passed freely. So that's how we can separate magnetic compounds from non-magnetic compounds. And in fractional distillation, the mixture of chemical components will be subjected to distillation process, where individual components will be separated into fractions of their molecular masses. So individual components will be having different molecular masses if you distill them, because they possess different boiling points, and the chemical components will be separated into individual fractions. Therefore, the fractional distillation has also become a widely used separation technique for the separation of heterogeneous mixtures. So these are the techniques, especially for the separation of homogeneous mixtures containing solids in liquid mixtures. Evaporation, distillation, and centrifugation techniques we will be employing. And for the separation of heterogeneous mixtures, we will be using sedimentation or gravitation process, filtration, magnetic separation, and fractional distillation process. And next class of mixtures we will be dealing in the laboratory will be liquids in liquids. So if you take a mixture, the components which are present are also in liquid, and the solvent may be present is also liquid. So of course, they're also present in homogeneous state and heterogeneous state. How to separate these liquids which are present in liquid mixtures? The homogeneous mixtures will be subjected to simple distillation process or fractional distillation process. And the principle involved in this simple or fractional distillation process remains the same. So based on the boiling points of the compounds which are present in the mixture, they are converted into individual fractions. So at different temperatures, individual components will be converted into individual fractions, and these fractions are related to individual components which are present. So that's how we will be using simple or fractional distillation process. In the simple distillation process, as I told earlier, the mixture will be heated to a particular temperature in order to convert an individual component into vapor, and that vapor will be collected in a collector flask, where the collector flask is maintained at a lower temperature. At lower temperature, that component will be converted into either liquid or solid. That's how the simple distillation technique we will be using. But here, we are taking the liquid. So when you collect the vapor of the liquid which has been separated by the distillation process, the collector flask will be having a liquid, and that is going to be the separated component. So a complex mixture you can subject for the separation process by simple distillation technique, and the distill whatever obtained, that will be having individual component. And one of the most popular techniques is the chromatographic technique in order to separate chemical components which are present in homogeneous mixture. And we will be concentrating on these chromatographic techniques in this particular semester. A variety of the chromatographic techniques we will be following for the separation of solids, liquids, gaseous, and supercritical fluid analytes. And even along with chromatographic techniques, electrophoretic techniques are also widely used for the separation of chemical compounds, where we will use electrical energy as an influencing force for the separation of homogeneous mixture, for the separation of chemical components which are present in homogeneous mixture. All right. Then we come to heterogeneous mixtures. Heterogeneous mixtures which are having liquids. Liquid mixtures, if we take, a simple and very popular separation technique we will use for the separation of heterogeneous mixture is using separatory funnel. Here, we will do partitioning of the analyte. We will do partitioning of the analyte based on the relative solubility of the analyte in different solvents. So we will take two different solvents in the separating funnel, and we will make analyte to interact with one of the solvent. Whatever the solvent which will be having more affinity for the dissolution of the analyte will be transferred to that particular solvent. So this process will be done by using a separating funnel. So separation techniques in chemistry is very, very essential. Why it is essential? Because wherever you go, if you go to mining industry or food processing laboratories or food processing industries or research laboratories or synthetic laboratories, quality of the finished product is very, very essential. So if we end up with any product, we will be interesting to get only one chemical component which must be present in the product. If the product is a mixture of enantiomer, then it will be very essential to separate all those two enantiomers. And if the product is having more than two components, then we will lose the interest to use that particular product from the synthetic scheme, whatever which has been used for the production of that particular compound. So purity or the quality aspect of the finished product is very, very essential in mining industry. If you go to mining industry, we will be using the ore sample. We will be using ore is nothing but it is a mixture of the metal, more than one metal or more than any two or three non-metals or any oxides or any sulfates, etc. So we are intended to obtain a metal in the free state. That is nothing but the quality. That is nothing but the purity. So gold mining industry, if you go, we are intended to obtain the pure gold. If the gold is having impurity by the oxides of something or by sulfates of something, then we will lose the interest to use that particular gold, and we can say that that gold is impure one. Therefore, the quality aspect is very important in using the final finished product. So if you go to mining industry, or even if you go to food processing laboratories, if food processing laboratories will be producing variety of the food materials, and that food material will be having acceptable quality. What is quality? Quality means whatever we are intended to have in that particular sample, that must be present. So other than that, nothing should be present. So that is the quality. So even synthetic laboratories, very, very essential in synthetic laboratories or in research laboratories, the quality aspect is very, very essential. Why? Because the final results, what we are going to produce in a laboratory or in a research laboratory, which are very, very important to express with accuracy and precision. And even whatever the product you are going to obtain, that must be pure enough, sufficiently pure. So if it is impure one, we may lose our business. If our synthetic laboratory is producing the chemicals in a bench scale manner in bulk amount, we may lose our business, we may lose the benefit, and we may not get the certification by the statutory bodies, or we may not succeed in our research if the compounds, whatever we have synthesized, are with impurities. Therefore, the essentiality of using these separation techniques, especially in the field of chemistry, is very, very important with respect to quality aspect. So, of course, while speaking all these things, variety of the separation techniques we will be using in chemistry. What are those separation techniques we will follow? Separation techniques are principally classified into non-chromatographic and chromatographic techniques. Separation techniques, fundamentally, they are classified into non-chromatographic and chromatographic techniques. This classification is because nowadays, chromatographic techniques are highly sophisticated. Of course, although they are highly sophisticated, they are very, very sensitive, and even less number of sample may be required to complete the separation process, and adequate results are obtained with accuracy and precision. Therefore, if you go to pharma industry or food processing industry or any environmental laboratories, these chromatographic techniques are widely followed. But because of the sophistication and the requirement of highly skillful operator to operate these chromatographic instruments, we may recommend the non-chromatographic instruments or non-chromatographic separation techniques for the separation of chemical components. What are these non-chromatographic techniques? We may use simple extraction process. And this extraction process may be liquid-liquid extraction, means analyte will be made to interact between the two liquids, and if the analyte having the greater solubility in any one of these two liquids, that will be made to transfer. So we will take the analyte by dissolving one liquid. That means we will take the solution of the sample and we will transfer that into separating funnel, and we will shake the separating funnel with an organic solvent or with any other solvent which is opposite to the solvent what we have used for the dissolution of the analyte. So after shaking the separating funnel, we will allow the layers to equilibrate. If the analyte which was present in the aqueous layer was having the more solubility in the organic layer, then definitely there will be selective transfer of the analyte from aqueous to organic layer. So this type of separation process is known as liquid-liquid extraction. In contrast to liquid-liquid extraction, solid phase extraction is the other separation technique where we will use a solid phase, where we will make the analyte to interact with a solid phase, a typical solid phase, either by the adsorption process or by van der Waals force of attraction or electrostatic force of attraction, or hydrogen bonding, or polarity interaction or dipolar interaction, etc. So we will use a sorbent or we will use a solid phase, and once the analyte is made to interact with this solid phase, different types of interactions will be possible. So if you assume a sample is containing 4 analytes, it is not true to say that all those 4 components will be possessing same type of interaction with the solid phase. So whichever the solute which is having greater interaction with the solid phase, that will be stayed over the surface of the solid phase, and the rest of the analyte will be passed through the liquid front. So therefore, we will use the principle of solid phase extraction technique and we will separate the analyte. And we also have the knowledge to convert any species into supercritical fluid by heating a particular substance above its critical temperature. By applying the pressure above its critical value, we can convert liquid into supercritical fluid state. Supercritical fluid state is an intermediate state between liquid and gaseous state. So the density and the typical characteristics of the sample, such as viscosity and the diffusion coefficient of the solute, will be enhanced if you convert any liquid into supercritical fluid. So the extraction of the analyte by converting into supercritical fluid is also efficient in order to separate the chemical components which are present in the complex mixture. So all these three techniques we will be understanding in the forthcoming lectures. They are liquid-liquid extraction, solid phase extraction, and supercritical fluid extraction. On the other hand, apart from these extraction techniques, we will also employ the electrophoretic techniques. Here, analyte will be placed between the two electrodes, and once the power supply is switched on, that means to say that electric field is induced. So soon after the induction of the electric field, the species which are converted by dissociation into positively and negatively charged species, they will show respective migration towards either cathode and anode. Say, positively charged species will migrate towards the cathode, and then negatively charged species will show migration towards the anode. Of course, we can reverse this too. We can make negatively charged species to migrate towards the anode and positively charged species to migrate towards the cathode. Both are true. So, electrophoresis. Electro means with the application of the electric energy, the movement of the analyte, the movement of the chemical species can be initiated, and this particular separation technique is called as electrophoretic technique. And all these four important separation techniques will be falling under non-chromatographic techniques because we do not use any principle of chromatography here, therefore they are put under non-chromatographic techniques. In contrast to these non-chromatographic techniques, chromatographic techniques are widely popular, and because in chromatographic techniques, whatever the type of the components present, irrespective of their physical states, we can subject them for separation. So if the sample is present in the solid state, we can convert that into liquid state by dissolving in a suitable solvent. Or if the sample is present in the liquid state, that will be directly injected into the chromatographic column. And whatever the chemical components which are present in the sample, they can be easily separated by this chromatographic technique. Here, two important phases are used. One will be stationary phase and one will be mobile phase. Analyte will be made to interact with the stationary phase, and the mobile phase will be carrying the analytes which are present in the sample. So mobile phase will also be known as carrier phase or carrier gas or carrier liquid, whatever it is. So we will understand, you will understand the principle of chromatographic techniques when we come to chromatographic techniques. The definition principle you will be realizing very clearly. More importantly, these chromatographic separations will be done by following two principles based on column chromatography and planar chromatography. As the name is implying here, column chromatographic technique will be employing a column, a typical column. That column will be made by either stainless steel or glass or plastic. So this column chromatography will be further classified into gas chromatography, liquid chromatography, and supercritical fluid chromatography. Gas chromatography means stationary phase will be a solid or a liquid, and the mobile phase will be a gas. Liquid chromatography means stationary phase will be a solid or liquid, and the mobile phase will be a liquid. Supercritical fluid chromatography means mobile phase will be a supercritical fluid. So you must remember, in chromatographic technique, stationary phase and mobile phases will be used. Stationary phase remains same with respect to its nature in all these three chromatographic techniques, but mobile phase will be varying with its nature. Gaseous mobile phase here, liquid mobile phase here, and supercritical fluid mobile phase here. When you come to planar chromatography means here a plane surface will be employed for the separation of chemical components. Particularly, these planar chromatographic techniques are the preliminary tools in order to develop any chromatographic procedure for liquid chromatography. So the separations will be performed based on the principle of paper chromatography and thin layer chromatography. Under planar chromatography, separations will be performed by using a paper chromatography and thin layer chromatography. The extension of the principle, methodology, theory, and applications of these chromatographic techniques, let us discuss when we come to the respective section. Let me start the solvent extraction first. Solvent extraction is also known as liquid-liquid extraction. Solvent extraction is also known as liquid-liquid extraction. What is the meaning of this solvent extraction, and what is the basis for the separation of chemical components by this solvent extraction technique? So in solvent extraction, solutes are going to be extracted, or solutes are going to be transferred from one liquid phase to another liquid phase. Why the solute is transferred? That is because of the relative solubility of the solute. Solute will be transferred from one solvent to another solvent. Suppose if you have two solvents, the relative solubility of the solute in one solvent was lesser than the relative solubility of solute in other solvent. So when you create an interface between both the solvent, whichever the solvent which is having greater solubility for the solute will be moving into that particular solvent. So therefore, the relative solubility of the solute is a key factor for the separation of the solute based on the relative solubilities by liquid-liquid extraction technique. Let me demonstrate this by a simple example. Let me take a mixture of benzoic acid and paramethoxyphenol. Benzoic acid and paramethoxyphenol. The requirements I need that separating funnel I need. A simple separating funnel, it may be 125 ml or 250 ml separating funnel. A clean separating funnel is required. You take the mixture of benzoic acid and paramethoxyphenol. You dissolve this in either dichloromethane or dichloroethane. CS2Cl2 means dichloromethane. Both are soluble in dichloromethane. Benzoic acid and paramethoxyphenol both are soluble in dichloromethane. When you take this solution in the separating funnel, you dissolve both the compounds in dichloromethane and you transfer the solution into the separating funnel. Next, you add aqueous saturated solution of sodium bicarbonate to the separating funnel. First, in the first step, you have dissolved both the compounds. You have dissolved the given mixture in dichloromethane. Then you have transferred the solution into the separating funnel. Then in the next step, you have to add the saturated sodium bicarbonate solution to the separating funnel. What happens here? Benzoic acid and paramethoxyphenol both are present in the mixture. You have made this saturated sodium bicarbonate to interact with these two compounds. So after the addition of saturated bicarbonate solution, you will close the stopper of the separating funnel and you will shake the separating funnel rigorously for say 30 seconds or 60 seconds. Once the shaking is over, you will make the separating funnel static. You will keep it aside as such. So you will allow the layers to equilibrate. Because dichloromethane and aqueous sodium bicarbonate layers are immiscible, because this is going to be aqueous and this is going to be non-aqueous or organic. Dichloromethane is organic solvent. Saturated sodium bicarbonate solution, aqueous solution, is aqueous in nature. Both of them are immiscible. So when you keep the separating funnel for the equilibration process, you will be able to see two layers. This is the first factor. Second thing is, because benzoic acid is a strong acid than paramethoxyphenol, the carboxylic acid of benzoic acid will be made to react with sodium bicarbonate. Sodium bicarbonate is a weak base. So benzoic acid will be reacting with sodium bicarbonate to undergo neutralization reaction. Simple acid-base reaction takes place. As a result, benzoic acid will be converted into sodium benzoate. Sodium benzoate is easily soluble in water because water is used to prepare the saturated solution of sodium bicarbonate. So initially benzoic acid was present in the dichloromethane layer. After the treatment of this mixture with sodium bicarbonate, benzoic acid has been converted into sodium benzoate and its solubility in dichloromethane has been declined and its solubility in water has been increased. So therefore, it will come to the aqueous layer. Now, as a result, the separation of paramethoxyphenol from the benzoic acid. So this is known as liquid-liquid extraction. You will be using two liquids. One is dichloromethane and the other one is water or saturated sodium bicarbonate solution. Selective transfer of benzoic acid from dichloromethane to aqueous layer by liquid-liquid extraction is the basis for the separation of these two compounds. Here, the selection of the solvent is very important. Saturated sodium bicarbonate you have used. Why can't we use sodium hydroxide? Because sodium hydroxide is a strong base. We cannot use it. If you use the strong base, sodium hydroxide, even paramethoxyphenol, it is also acidic. this hydroxy group which is present in the para-methoxyphenol will also react with sodium hydroxide to convert this phenolic OH group into sodium phenolate ion, O minus and Na plus. So this will also come to the aqueous layer if you use sodium hydroxide. So the conditions are also very essential in order to increase the extraction efficiency. Extraction efficiency means, assume if you have taken 1 gram of the mixture of benzoic acid and para-methoxyphenol, each of them having in an amount 0.5 gram. 0.5 gram of benzoic acid and 0.5 gram of para-methoxyphenol are present in the mixture. Whether you have succeeded to transfer all those 0.5 gram of benzoic acid to the aqueous layer or not, this is the efficiency. So this technique is known as liquid-liquid extraction technique. So in liquid-liquid extraction technique, selective transfer of the analyte from one liquid phase to another liquid phase is seen because the relative solubility of the solute has been increased and it will be differ from this solvent to this solvent. The relative solubility of the benzoic acid was lower in dichloromethane. When sodium bicarbonate is added, that has been converted into ionized compound, and this ionized compound is having greater solubility in water, therefore it has been separated. Therefore, this liquid-liquid extraction technique is very important. You might have done in bulk separation. In bulk separation, variety of the organic compounds can be separated by using the separatory funnel, where the property of the solvent should be matched with the property of the compound which you are going to separate. So this is going to be the principle in the separation of chemical components by liquid-liquid extraction technique. Okay, so based on this example, let me define the liquid-liquid extraction. The term liquid-liquid extraction, it is simply the selective transfer of solute from one liquid phase to another liquid phase based on the analyte's relative solubility. So the selective transfer of the analyte from organic layer to aqueous layer or vice versa. Why the transfer of analyte from organic layer to aqueous layer or aqueous layer to organic layer? Because of the relative solubility of the analyte. Of course, analyte might be soluble in the organic layer. Once you introduce the aqueous layer and you will allow the analyte to dissolve in the aqueous layer, analyte will be rapidly transferred into the aqueous layer because of its more relative solubility, highest relative solubility. Okay, and very important requirement in order to succeed a liquid-liquid extraction is the pair of solvents what we will use must be immiscible together. They should not be mixed together. They must be immiscible. Whatever the organic solvent you are going to use, whatever the aqueous solvent you are going to use, both the solvent, when you place them in the separating funnel, they must be able to form two different layers, two distinct layers. So the solvent which is having greater density will be at the bottom, and the solvent which is having a lower density will be at the top. So there are two distinct layers of the solvent which are present in the separating funnel. The lower layer will be having greater density than the upper layer. Say for example, if you take the mixture of sodium chloride and iodine, you dissolve them in water. Because of the common ion effect of chloride, because sodium chloride will be ionized to produce Na plus and Cl minus. Because of the common ion effect, iodine and sodium chloride will be present in the aqueous layer. You will face this aqueous layer. You have to place this aqueous layer into the separating funnel, and you treat the aqueous layer with carbon tetrachloride. Here, carbon tetrachloride is going to be the organic solvent, and this organic solvent will be immiscible with the aqueous solvent, that is going to be water. So you will shake this. You will shake the mixture of sodium chloride and iodine in carbon tetrachloride, and you will add aqueous layer. You will add aqueous layer into the separating funnel. Aqueous layer means maybe water. You will add both of them into the separating funnel. So you take the separating funnel, you take the mixture of sodium chloride and iodine, you add some volume of carbon tetrachloride and water, close the stopper of the separating funnel, you shake the separating funnel. After you shake the separating funnel, what will happen? Both the layers will be equilibrating because carbon tetrachloride is a heavier solvent than water. So carbon tetrachloride will be present as a bottom solvent. The below layer will be the carbon tetrachloride layer. Carbon tetrachloride will be pink in color. Why? Because of iodine. Iodine will be present. Iodine will be transferred into carbon tetrachloride layer, where sodium chloride will be transferred to aqueous layer. So iodine is more soluble in carbon tetrachloride rather than the water, rather than aqueous solvent. Therefore, while shaking the mixture of sodium chloride and iodine in a separating funnel, in the presence of carbon tetrachloride, iodine will be selectively transferred into carbon tetrachloride because of its relative solubility. Why? Because carbon tetrachloride is immiscible with water. Both the solvents are able to form distinct layers. So you can see, you can inspect both the distinct layers for the presence of the analyte. So this is how the definition of liquid-liquid extraction, that is selective transfer of the iodine from aqueous layer to carbon tetrachloride, a selective transfer of sodium chloride from carbon tetrachloride to aqueous solvent is known as liquid-liquid extraction. Okay. The requirements are very, very essential while we do liquid-liquid extraction or solvent extraction. We will be using aqueous solvents. We also use organic solvents in order to process the extraction. So what kind of aqueous solvents we will be using? What are the characteristics of aqueous solvents? More commonly, pure water will be used as a aqueous solvent. Purity is very important. It should not be contained with any unwanted species, because we are intended to have the product, we are intended to have the chemical species after the separation with the most purity. Therefore, the purity of the solvent is also very important. Pure water we will be using, or even acidic solvents which are having pH from 0 to 6, or basic solvents which are having pH from 8 to 14 are also used. The citric acid we will use, dilute HCl we will use, dilute nitric acid we will use, dilute sulfuric acid we will use, dilute oxalic acid we will use, right? And even basic solvents we will use, sodium bicarbonate we will use, sodium carbonate we will use, sodium tartrate we will use, sodium citrate we will use, sodium orthophosphate we will use. So acidic or basic solvents are also used. Some high ionic strength buffers are also used, because during the extraction efficiency is solely dependent on the pH. So high ionic strength solutions are used where ionization will be initiated to the greater extent. Because of this ionization, the analyte extraction efficiency might be increased. And if some analytes are needed to be avoided from extraction process, we will be using complexing agents or ion pairing agents or chiral agents. So if you use these agents, they will react with the metal, or they will reacting with the complexing metal or complexing species which is present in the mixture. So that will be complex and that will be retained in the aqueous layer, and the remainder will be passed through the organic layer, passed into organic layer, or vice versa. Complexes may be insoluble in aqueous layer, but they may be soluble in the organic layer. So this is how. And even ion pairing agents, ion pair complexes we will be made to form. We can convert single analyte into ion pair complex by treating with ion pairing agents, and these ion pairing agents can be made to transfer into organic layer such as dibutyl phosphate. So the organic layer containing this ion pair complex can be subjected for further investigation. And even chiral reagents are used to convert the chemical components into chiral species. So chiral reagents will be converting achiral compounds into chiral compounds. Therefore, the extraction of chiral compounds will become very easy. So enantiomeric separation we will be doing by using these chiral reagents. Therefore, all these solvents among pure water, acidic or basic solvents, high ionic strength buffers, complexing agents or ion pairing agents or chiral agents, these are used widely as aqueous solvents while we do extraction by liquid-liquid extraction technique. And what are the organic solvents you will be using? Most commonly, the hydrocarbons and chlorinated solvents you will be using. Chlorinated solvents in the sense it may be dichloroethane, ClCS2CS2Cl, dichloromethane or chloroform or carbon tetrachloride. So these are chlorinated solvents. So these chlorinated solvents are most commonly used because of their density, larger density than water. So dichloroethane, dichloromethane, chloroform or carbon tetrachloride, when you treat with water, they will be settled at the bottom. Water will be present at the top because of the density. They are heavier solvent than water. That is the advantage. So even most of the chemical compounds will be showing the dissolution will be showing the solubility in dichloroethane or dichloromethane or chloroform or carbon tetrachloride. Therefore, these solvents will be used as most commonly used solvents under organic solvents. Next, hydrocarbons. These are also very widely used, mainly pentane and above aliphatic hydrocarbons such as pentane and above, N-pentane, N-hexane, N-heptane, N-nonane, N-decane. And even aromatics such as toluene and xylene, even benzene can also be used. Alcohols, N-hexanol and above, because of immiscibility. Why can't we use lower aliphatics here? Because of the miscibility. They are miscible with the aqueous solvent. If they are miscible, we cannot use. If they are immiscible, we can use. So if you take any alcohols, N-hexanol and above, we can use them because they are immiscible with water. So they are able to form a distinct layer from water. They are separated, and hence the solubility of dunolite can be expected. And even esters, ethyl acetate, methyl acetate, propyl acetate, etc. Esters can be used. Ketones, hexane and above, C6 and above ketones are used. So benzophenone we can use, benzophenone. Ethers, diethyl and above, diethyl ether, N-propyl ether, etc. All these ethers, because they are organic in nature and their density will become to as a consideration factor, and their volatility, all those things are matter here. So organic solvents we will use in liquid extraction are chlorinated solvents such as dichloroethane, dichloromethane, chloroform, or trichloromethane, carbon tetrachloride, tetrachloromethane, dichloroethane, dichloromethane, trichloromethane or chloroform, tetrachloromethane or carbon tetrachloride. Hydrocarbons such as aliphatics, pentane and above, aromatics, benzene, toluene, xylene, alcohols, N-hexanol and above, esters, ketones, ethers. All these solvents will be put under organic solvents because of their immiscibility with water or aqueous solvent. They are used for liquid extraction process. Selectivity of separation is very essential. You do any separation process, selectivity is very essential. What is selectivity here? And what are the factors which decides the selectivity of separation? Selectivity means if we are intended to extract a metal, if we are intended to extract an analyte, in general, I can say, without any intervention from the other species, we must be able to separate that metal, or we must be able to separate that analyte into the organic layer or into the aqueous layer. That is selectivity. So here, selectivity is dependent on the property of both aqueous layer and the organic layer. Let me say something about the aqueous phase property. Whatever the aqueous phase you are using, it may be water or it may be acidic solvent or basic solvent or complexing agent or chiral agent or ion pairing agent or high ionic strength buffer, it must have greater purity. Utmost purity is very essential. So not only this, we will use sometimes the modifiers in order to increase the polarity of the aqueous phase. In order to modify the polarity of the aqueous phase, we will be using modifiers, organic modifiers. Even in the presence of these modifiers, the purity of modifiers is also very important. They must not make the solvent impure one. So even in the presence of modifiers. And extraction is because of the dissolution. Analyte will be dissolving in the organic solvent or in the aqueous solvent. If you take the analyte in the aqueous solvent and if you extract with an organic solvent, analyte will be selectively transferred to the organic solvent after extraction process is over. So during the extraction process, because analyte was soluble in the aqueous solvent what you took initially, and it possessed hydrophilic property. When you extract into organic layer, analyte should possess more hydrophobic property, means the hydrophilic property must be declined and hydrophobic property must be extended. As a result of extension in the hydrophobic property of the analyte, the extraction or the dissolution of the analyte in the organic layer can be anticipated. Otherwise, extraction selectivity will be reversed. So analyte should become less hydrophilic when we treat the aqueous solution of the sample with the organic solvent during the extraction procedure. So analyte has to be made less hydrophilic and more hydrophobic when we initiate the extraction. Such a aqueous layer we have to use. And next, organic phase. It is very important to decide which organic solvent we have to use. Whatever the organic phase you are going to select, and that must be immiscible with the aqueous solvent. Say, for example, you take methanol. Methanol as an organic solvent, ethanol as an organic solvent, and you are using sample to dissolve in water. Methanol and water, they are miscible. So you cannot use methanol or ethanol for the extraction procedure. If you take carbon tetrachloride, if you take chloroform, if you take dichloroethane or dichloromethane, when you mix with water, they are immiscible. Two distinct layers are going to be formed. This is immiscibility, means when you mix two solvents, you should not get homogeneous mixture. You should get heterogeneous layers. You should get two layers. So this is immiscibility. Whatever the organic phase you are using, that should be immiscible with the water. That is the first factor. And the second factor is density. In most of the cases, if possible, we have to prefer the organic phase or organic solvent, which is heavier than water, which is heavier than the aqueous solvent what we are using. Because once the extraction process is over, we will use the organic layer which is contained with the analyte. So it will be very easy to transfer the organic layer if organic solvent is denser than the aqueous solvent. Why? Because of the higher density of the organic solvent, after the extraction process is over, the organic solvent will be present at the bottom layer. You can release the stopper, you can loosen the stopper, and you can release the organic solvent to pass, and you can collect the organic layer into a container very easily without any loss. If the organic solvent is less denser, the organic solvent will be settled at the bottom of the aqueous, top of the aqueous layer. Therefore, first you have to release the aqueous solvent, then you have to collect the organic solvent. That will be difficult, that will be time consuming, and that may not lead accurate results. So therefore, density is a very important factor. If the density of aqueous and organic solvents are differed, then only the segregation or the separation of the organic solvent from the aqueous solvent is possible based on the density. Then the next parameter is volatility. Because after the collection of the extract, it may be organic solvent or aqueous solvent. More particularly, if you have collected the organic solvent after the extraction is over, you assume analyte is present in the organic solvent because analyte has been transferred from aqueous solvent to organic solvent. You will keep the solution after the extraction in the presence of organic solvent for evaporation. What is evaporation? You will heat the solution or the extract for heating. Because of the lower boiling point of the organic solvent, that will be evaporated to the atmosphere. So we will prefer always more volatile solvent. The procurement of the analyte will become very easy if you use more volatile solvent. If you use diethyl ether as a solvent, once the extraction is over, you will keep the beaker for evaporation by using sunlight itself. So diethyl ether will be expelled to the atmosphere by evaporation process, and the solute will be left over as a residue. So more volatile solvent you have to use, that is preferred. Less volatile solvent are not preferred, because larger volumes of the organic solvents we are going to use in liquid extraction, and we will be intended to procure the analyte by evaporation process. If the solvent is more volatile, evaporation will become very easy. We need not to heat the compound to a more temperature, because here the limitation to heat the solution of organic solvent and the solute at higher temperature leads to thermal degradation. Analyte may lose its original property. Say, for example, if you use any compound for extraction process, if you have extracted any compound into diethyl ether or any other solvent, and you have heated the solution, you have heated the content to 100 degrees Celsius. At 100 degrees Celsius, compound might have undergone thermal degradation. So we will lose the analyte. We will lose the property of the analyte. That's what a more volatile solvent we will prefer. Then the toxicity. As a chemist, I can say that during the liquid-liquid extraction, I will be handling larger volumes of the organic solvent. Because of this, because of the volatility of these solvents, the vapors I will consume during the extraction, I will consume the vapors of the organic solvent. These vapors, if I consume, they must not be toxic. If they are toxic, my health issues will be started. So lower toxicity is expected. Any solvent, any organic solvent you are going to use, toxicity is very important. You should possess lower toxicity. Say, for example, you have the group of dichloroethane, dichloromethane, chloroform, and carbon tetrachloride. Simply, I can say chloroform and carbon tetrachloride. Carbon tetrachloride is more toxic than chloroform. So you use chloroform. Of course, chloroform is also toxic. But if you have the choice among chloroform and carbon tetrachloride, better use chloroform because chloroform is less toxic than carbon tetrachloride. The next property is polarity. Polarity is very important. The analyte solubility in the organic layer is just because of polarity index. If the polarity of analyte is matching with the polarity of the organic phase, then only we can expect the solubility. Otherwise, we cannot. Like dissolves like attract like principle is holds good here. Like attracts like. If the polarity of the analyte is matching with the polarity of the organic phase, it is rapidly attracted by the organic layer. It is rapidly attracted by the organic solvent. Therefore, the dissolution of the analyte in the organic solvent. Like attracts like. Like attracts like means the polarity of the analyte is matching with the polarity of the organic phase. Therefore, the solubility of the analyte will become rapid in the organic phase. Next one is the cost. Because we will be using say 2 liters, 0.5 liter, 500 ml of the organic solvent, say 25 ml of the organic solvent per extraction. You may need to do n number of extractions. If the cost is more, we have to bear more expenses. So expensive solvent will not be recommended. So low cost solvent will be always recommended for use. So these are the properties of any organic solvent you are going to use for the liquid-liquid extraction technique. So this is all about the property of the aqueous solvent and the organic solvents what we will use. It is very important to understand what kind of aqueous solvent you have to use, what kind of organic solvent we have to use. So in order to increase the selectivity of extraction and thereby the extraction efficiency can be enhanced. So thank you very much. We will meet in the next module for discussion on basis of solvent extraction.